So you've got audio coming out, going straight up out of the main outputs or the individual outputs. Have those going to a mixing board, speakers, what have you. Whatever makes sound using that audio. You've got headphone jack, which you can use for headphones and monitoring. That also outputs the audio here. You've got the MIDI in and out, that only does the MIDI information. That can go into the DAW sequencer, whatever you have on your laptop. It can also trigger other instruments. Originally, MIDI was developed as a way for two instruments to interact with each other before PCs and computers were even really used. And so you would hook up, like, in series, a bunch of sequencers at the same time and run them using MIDI, and then you could play one sequencer and have like 4 sounds playing at the same time, something like that, depending on latency. But now it's mostly used for sequencers where you can record patterns in there, alter them, and then play them back using virtual instruments and stuff like that. Or you've got the USB port, which also does the same thing. So taking these MIDI instructions, you can really do anything with them. So you've got MIDI in and out ports on here. The out port is pretty simple enough, as we talked about. It sends MIDI information out of the drums, out of the module here, depending on what you hit. Say I hit this pad, which corresponds to, like, say F sharp at a certain velocity, say 90. That's output into the sequencer. The sequencer records that or plays back the sound that I want, the virtual instrument. So this by itself is not making any sound. This is all the computer. If I mute the computer, you don't get any sound. Because this is, I don't have any sounds triggering here, just MIDI notes. But also, it kind of works the other way. If you have a sequence in your sequencer and wanted to play it back using these sounds, you can hook up the MIDI in and then play it back. So you could kind of have the MIDI robot playing these drums for you based on a pre-recorded sequence if you wanted to. That's not used as commonly these days, just because, like, virtual instruments within the machine are generally as good, if not better, than the sounds in here. But that's the concept behind MIDI in and out. So the cool thing about MIDI is that you can really get any kind of sound that you could possibly imagine with it. A lot of these drum pads are kind of limited by their internal memory. Although a lot of them now are able, you can expand them with your own samples. I could load my own samples into here, or yeah, this is a compact flash card, and that's how old it is. But a lot of them allow you even to hook up like a hard drive or a USB drive in there and draw samples from there. But I think you can have even more power with MIDI hooking up to the laptop, because there's a lot you can do with that. You can coordinate loops, samples using the program. How many people here use Ableton Live or know what that is? So you can use your drum pad as a MIDI controller to kind of trigger loops, different parts of a song using Ableton Live, changing effects, all sorts of fun stuff, depending on how you map it. So, cool thing about this, any kind of sound I want, even stuff that you wouldn't really find in an acoustic drum set, or in a electronic drum set. So I've got like a Rhodes patch up in here. Or whatever you want. We'll look at the Akira Jimbo video later, and he actually hooks everything up. He's playing melody, harmony, bass lines, and the drum part simultaneously using, it's crazy. So I don't know if you guys can see here, but I've got Logic up here. If you guys don't have Logic, GarageBand works as well for this stuff. You have a lot of these options in GarageBand. So I can change this to whatever sound. I mean, it's really limitless. All sorts of fun stuff.
And in your particular synth package, you can change which notes correspond, because it only has 9 trigger units.
You can, yeah. You can do that in a couple different ways. This program here has all of these samples assigned to certain keys. Now you can change that here, change what sample goes to which note. You can even create your own sample, your own patches, your own presets. You can drag and drop your own samples in there and just create it right there on the computer. And UltraBeat requires like a class in its own. It just does all different stuff you can do with it. It's a synthesizer, it's a sampler, it synthesizes samples, it modulates samples, it does all sorts of crazy things.
Logic doesn't come with UltraBeat.
Yeah.
It does?
And you can hook this up, you can bring this to a gig, and then like change the patch from song to song, using all the different sounds, or if you've got sequences you want to play back. Anyway, so you can use whatever stuff you want. These virtual instruments, they play back anything. And then you can emulate real instruments, or you can just kind of have crazy sounds. A lot of these are just crazy sounds. Or you can emulate real instruments.
Oh yeah.
So you get all sorts of.
It's Neil Peart.
Yeah, man. Whatever you want. Imitate acoustic sounds. But the thing about imitating acoustic sounds is it's never going to sound 100% like a drum set. I mean, I was talking about before those different velocity layers. You know, you hit something at a certain strength, it's going to make us have a certain attack, and it's impossible to really layer all of those on. You know, so there's a lot of different nuances that you can do acoustically. Cymbals, yeah.
Yeah.
What do you personally use that for? Like in terms of like gigs, like do you run like whole tracks tracking through that, or?
I've used it to trigger loops and other sound effects. So I'll be like playing something and I want an additional snare sound, and bam, there you go, additional snare sound, and you can change that from song to song. Or
T808.
yeah, we're like.
Next club hit.
So like this is, you have it pre-programmed for certain tunes or something. This tune uses this loop. I hit that, bam, I can play along with that on the acoustic drum. And depending on how it's mixed, it should sound pretty sweet. I want to put
Yeah.
So you can do that stuff, and it adds an entire different level to your live performance. I also use it for sequencing stuff at home.
Maybe just keep jazz brushes, spin hi-hat.
Absolutely. Brushes are difficult to program on here. Yeah, that's one of those things. There are certain patches, you can get good at it, you can make realistic sounds. It's kind of tricky though.
Have you seen the wave drum?
I was just about to
Yeah,
ask
the wave
that.
drum will do it, but that's more expensive than this. It's
It
just
is
the one patch.
ridiculous.
But it's pretty sweet. It's pretty authentic.
Yeah.
Also, the new Pearl kits.
Oh,
You
yeah,
know, the E Pro.
Yeah, the E Pro.
It's like hybrid acoustic electric. You can use it for either. Zildjian's got new Gen 16 cymbals. There's all this acoustic electric stuff happening. Kind of the best of both worlds, giving you the sound and feel of acoustic stuff, but also the flexibility of being able to do all this stuff with MIDI. But that's pretty new. And as it comes into the mainstream, that'll be pretty interesting to see how that works. So each pad in here, for each patch that you have, each pad is assigned a certain MIDI note. So I mean, I'll play this. Those are assigned those MIDI notes.
Yeah.
Now I created my own patch on here, which doesn't have any sounds on here, just has the MIDI notes that I want to correspond to what I want. So if I go to like, so this is just MIDI notes. It's only outputting MIDI.
So it's
There's
just
no-
about what you set on each pad.
Yeah, there's no sound programmed into this patch. It's all.
So you can set these up
I have
to
it
play
set up.
both.
And for that, I just switched these around, the MIDI notes.
So you can have it set to play both the audio in there and trigger something.
Yeah,
from
that's
here.
what it's doing here. So this is the sound that it makes just by itself. And then if I turn the volume down here, that's just the MIDI sound. So it can do both at the same time.
How do you make it on-off?
Hmm?
Like, is on-off only apply to like samples or loops? Or like, say you want to trigger a part of the song, you just hit it again. How do you make that like different from just hitting it and making a drum sound?
Well, it depends on the firmware and the different modules, but a lot of them have different settings. Let's say you have your one-shot samples, as they're called. You hit it once, it plays, it's done. That's it. That's a one-shot. And there's also loops, where you'll program something in or have a longer sample. So here's some of the ones that are built in here. This will keep playing over and over until I tell it to stop. So there's a certain setting in there that says, okay, this is a loop. It goes for this long. Keep going. I want to turn it on and off. You can also change it so that it's not velocity sensitive. So I mean, if I hit it that's quiet, it plays back. If I hit it that hard, it plays back the same volume, which can be really useful if it's part of a song or something. You know, something you need to.
Can you drop that in from like you write the loop in Logic and then you drop that in there?
You can do that, or you can have this trigger the loop in Logic or in Ableton Live using MIDI. So there's plenty of options.
Yeah.
So it all depends. This is the difference between the audio built in here
Okay.
or the MIDI information being sent here. So I mean, if you're using the computer, you can have multiple things all plugged into an interface and all running through Ableton Live. A lot of groups will do that to kind of sync everything up in tempo, loops, and effects, and all that stuff. So if you're doing that, then you're basically using this as a MIDI controller. And this is sending, okay, I'm going to program, so this hits play. That'll start things rolling. Or this is stop. You can do that, all sorts of things. You can hook this up to a lighting system and be like, okay, I want to trigger this light now, or that light now. I mean, MIDI can do all sorts of crazy things.
How would you make the loop like just on there without, like, let's say you're just operating without it, or you're using the entire electronic drum set with the pad?
Well, that depends on the hardware that you have here. This has an automatic thing where you can create loops in the module itself without needing any of this stuff, using the internal sounds. Now, if you wanted to load in your own sounds using loops, you would have to load it in either on a card
Right.
or record it on here and